Hello, hello. Just setting some things up here. All right. So. All right, welcome. Today we are, I think, gonna work a little bit on adding more like features to, well, both the game and the game editor. So I have a few things planned actually, so for the future of the editor. One of the things I want to do is work on more complex entities. Where are those? Just to show you here. So yeah, so right now we can add entities into a game, but the only thing that they can do is they can have a name, an icon, and a size. Well, this icon and size is mostly for like editor display to show where the entity is and which entity it is, and the name is used then in the game engine to interpret which entity you want to create. So it's kind of like an ID. And right now all of those are like hard coded in the game engine to have certain components and behavior and whatever you want to have for your entities. But I've been toying around a little bit with an idea of adding support for adding components in the editor. So much like in Unity, for example, where you have components that you can add to an entity, and you can specify certain properties on the component and stuff like that. I think it would be cool if we would have the same kind of thing here, because that would enable a lot of custom things that you can do. For example, you can create a button that is connected to a door. You press the button, it's connected to the door through a variable in a component. So a component could be like on activate open door or something like that. You know, it's whatever you want to define as a developer and as a game designer here, or game developer. But the way I've framed this before is that we would have a list of properties on each entity type. However, I feel like that's pretty limiting. So, because the thing is, probably if you want to have entities that gonna share components, which you probably want to have, then it would be a pain to sort of define those properties for each entity type over and over again. And that's where components come in, because on components you can, for example, just as an example, you can have a health component that you just define, okay, this one is going to have this much health, and then for an entity type, all of the creatures or whatever, the stuff that's going to have health are going to have a health component. And then you can specify, you can specify, let's say for an entity type, you can specify sort of the default values for the components, but then also for entity instances, like when you create a scene and you drag some entities in, you create some entities, those are instances of the entity, and then you can also select those and modify the properties of the components on the instances as well. So you have both the default values on the entity type and the default components, but then the entity instances in the scene will also have properties that you can edit on the components for that entity instance. So that's per instance. And also it enables to, as because of using, if you're using like ECS or some kind of game engine that supports adding components to each instance, that you can do that as well in the game editor. And you can add components to instances as well. So if you want to have an entity that you want to like modify, you want to add like invincibility, or you want to add something else, like some trigger that happens just from that entity, like when it dies or when something else happens that's specific to that specific entity, but it shares an entity type with other entities, then you can create that entity there, and you can add a component to that entity instance. So that's kind of where I'm going with the direction of this, because that opens up a lot of possibilities that you can do. The design of the entities, or you build the entities, you do a lot more in the game editor when like defining the entities, and you still have to do some stuff in the game code, of course, but it's gonna be more like, okay, let's say in the scene you have an entity that has a health component, so then in the game code you would just encounter this entity, you need to create it at the position, and then you go through all the components it has. So it has a health component, so you add a health component, stuff like that. So you would define basically all the components in the game editor, and then in the game code you would actually instantiate those components. So that's kind of where I want to go with this, and that's gonna, as I said, that's gonna enable a whole bunch of different interactions between entities, and a lot more designing happening in the game editor itself. Hello Polaris7, thank you, have a nice day yourself. So that's kind of where my focus is right now. And also another thing that I've been thinking about, but I'm not gonna do it this time because I need to research a little bit more, is the tile map editor. So it's a little bit of a hassle to make these maps, and because it's a lot of like detail work and stuff. So what I'm thinking is implementing a tool that is more easy to use. So when you're painting, it's gonna sort of fill in the gaps between. So it's gonna fill in automatically. If you're painting some ground, it's gonna automatically put moss on top of it and put whatever it's gonna be for that specific type of ground and the surroundings. And I plan to use wave function collapse for that, or try to anyway. So I'm gonna have to do some. I'm gonna do some research on that. So that's not ready yet but that's also in the sites, like increasing sort of ease of use when creating the tile maps as well. And so the idea is that you would have this wave function collapse algorithm, and with that you could define a bunch of different types of combinations of tiles, and then when you paint, it's gonna automatically select some of those combinations and put things together. And then you just have to draw, like here I want the ground to be here, I want sort of maybe some background to be here, I want maybe a mossy ground here, maybe a rocky ground over here, and then it will like automatically paint that out for you. So that's the idea that I have there, which is debatable if it's actually gonna be super productive. I mean, it would be incredibly nice if we just got the tool working and got it up, but I think it's gonna be a lot of work and a lot of research going on into it. And also a lot of work actually defining these different types of regions that you can have, like, or types of biomes and you know, combinations of different things that you can do. But once it's up and running, then level design is going to be like level building is going to be really nice. But we'll see if we'll get to that. I'm gonna do some research about that off stream. But I think back to the entity type editor, I think this is sort of crucial, like getting components in and getting some things in there is kind of crucial to actually build sort of the dungeons that I want to have in a game, which is going to have like buttons to open doors and stuff like that. Things happen, things are going to be connected, things are going to happen in the game. And I think adding, I mean, of course we can do everything manually and stuff in the code, but I think having an editor would be a really nice way of doing that. And it would also enable a bunch of other stuff that you can do, and also connecting the editor to the game code, and the game code just generates a bunch of components that is supposed to be in the editor. And then a lot of things, I think the game code would be a lot leaner as well once we have that in place. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just gonna have to think a little bit about how to structure this. So I mean, of course we're gonna have to have components. So this would be the components that are kind of default for the entity type, together with default property values. All right. Now we also need a component editor in that case. So we need a new type of editor actually. So we actually need a component editor, and we're just utilizing the strength of this sort of editor suite, that it's easy to add another type of editor. So it's very easy to just do this. And now we can basically copy this over here. So here we would have custom components and the editor. Oops. So this would be the custom component editor, right? So this is custom component editor. You would have, let's say you have a name, you have properties, which are all of these. Now maybe we can set an icon, I don't know, just to be able to easily differentiate different components. I'm not sure, maybe name is enough, but we're gonna be able to define components, and they're gonna have a dynamic list of properties with perhaps even default values right in the component. So let's also add those, like default property values in this level as well. There's a bunch, maybe it's too much to have like default property values, but it's nice to be able to do it, I guess. But okay, so properties, you're gonna be able to add property. Like there's gonna be like this is more like, this is a component editor, but it will also sort of incorporate a property editor as well, you could say, but it's not a proper editor with its own like document or something, but it's like maybe we won't call it property editor, it's confusing a little bit. But you're gonna be able to add properties delete property, and now this also is nice if we could get a good way of finding like references to the properties and stuff, like, because if you're gonna delete a property and it's being used somewhere, well, maybe if you're deleting a property, you're gonna have to know what you're doing also. Like, you're deleting a property, it's like that feels like it's still in like the sign stage. Well, we'll see. We'll keep it like this and we'll see what kind of things we're not gonna think about too much about the problems that's gonna crop up right now. So we just want to have features for now. So so once you have a components, then you can put them onto entity types. So we would have here, we would have like add component. So maybe this could be an asset input that pushes a new item into the component list. Yeah, we'll see if we can get that working. And then we also need to be able to remove components. And for each component details, you want to be able to change the property values. But you don't want to be able to like edit the add properties or remove properties per, but that's going to be like set in stone for each component. Okay, let's see. Right, so once we have the components, then in the scene editor, the entities, we're basically going to remove metadata. That's not going to be a thing anymore. I'm just going to say remove metadata feature once components is. So okay, let's do this. Let's do components. So we want to remove metadata feature once components are implemented. And so the components is going to be for like on each entity instance details. Actually, we'll do something like this. I guess we can have this. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to organize this a little bit. Entity instance details, components. So we would have a list of components. Now these components are gonna be, when you create an entity, the component's gonna like auto populate, or it's not gonna have any difference from the entity type. So you're gonna choose an entity type. It's going to create an entity with the components that the entity type has, but then you're also going to be able to remove components or add new components to each instance of the entity. And you're also going to be able to edit properties. So this is going to be like also component details and edit property values. Okay, and then once we have that, then I think components are gonna be like fully implemented in the editor. And then once we have all that, then the game code will have to be updated to generate those components from the information we get from the editor here. And yeah, that's basically it, I think. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff. I think well, I probably won't be able to make everything this session, but we'll start with the component editor, because we need component we need components to be able to do anything. So yeah, let's start there. Now we need a new type of editor and document. So let's go to our file structure here, and let's see, where are we? Source, documents. So let's add a new type of document, which are components. And I'm just gonna copy something else here for now. Let's see, let's copy entity type. Okay, actually, let's do this. Let's remove you and let's copy documents entity type to component. Okay, so now we have that. Now we should that. Okay. Let's see, that's the type. Oh, there we go. I'm just searching and replacing a little bit here. Okay. And let's see, let's go here. Well, let's start at persistent data. So this is the data that's actually going to be like what's called, like, saved in, like, this is the actual data that's going to be for the component. So we're not going to have an icon, I don't think. Let's just remove that. Okay. And yeah, let's remove this. New component type. Yeah, I guess it's a component type, but let's just call it component maybe. Should we call it component type instead? Because it's gonna clash with the instance of the component, or maybe the components should be called component instance. I'm not sure. Let's just keep it as component for now. Okay, and ID. Yeah, everything needs ID. Deinitialize. Yeah, that's fine. Cloning is fine. There we go. So now we have that. We're also gonna need properties. Now we basically need a whole suite of like property type things. So let's have properties, and this is a, let's just make a new thing called like property object. So the idea is like it's gonna be very like dynamic type of thing, where it's kind of like a JSON object that it can have any number of fields, any number, like it can be any type. So this is gonna be interesting to do here. I think what we'll do is we'll have maybe a list of fields, perhaps. And they are going to be, let's use hash map, like arrays, like string array hash map, and it's gonna be what type. So it's gonna be string, that's the key or name of the field, and then the underlying thing is basically going to be a property, like a dynamic property. Yeah, let's just call it property, because the property is the dynamic thing. This is going to be a union enum. And now here we can basically say, okay, so we have object, that's going to be a property object. And then we're going to add things like we're going to have string, property string. We're going to have, well, I guess it doesn't really need to have its own type like that. This could just be this or whatever, or some kind of string. But I'm just going to say this for now. We'll figure it out. A number, property number. It could be like, we could separate it like integer and float as well if you want. We can do whatever we want here. But let's start somewhere. So let's start with object and fields, and because that's the first thing that's going to exist here, this property object here. Now we probably want to have some like convenience functions and stuff. Excuse me, I'm getting a call here, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So let's go with what we need. So let's say we have properties. What else do we need to do here? So we need to initialize it. We need an initialize function. And is there an empty for this? No? Yes, there is. Okay. Cool. And then we also need, we do need clone as well. The clone is kind of like, we need clone because of technical reasons. Like it's because we're, I probably need allocator as well. It's because we're basically parsing from JSON file, and when we want to make it into like a zig struct, there sometimes there's an issue with arena like leaving allocations and stuff behind. So you have to like, what I'm doing is I'm deinitializing the arena once the JSON has been parsed, but before it's deinitialized I also clone the values that I'm interested in to keep here. So basically clone the entire thing and then just get rid of the arena, and then we basically have converted the JSON parsed value into our own sort of struct here with all the allocations like fully managed by us instead of by the JSON parser. But anyway, it might just be me not understanding how the JSON parser works, but yeah, I've been encountering that issue like a lot, so I'm just gonna do it like this because this works. So clone will create, like, we'll do that, and basically, I mean, we're gonna do, let's see. Yeah, the thing is, let's do a clone. It's gonna be a mutable cloned. That's gonna be a property object. I guess .init could be, this could be an empty. this. And then we don't really have an init function. Okay, so that's that, and then we return this. Before that, we want to loop through basically all the... we're gonna make an iterator. Wait, why am I not getting... oh. Well, we have clone on this one, but that's just gonna clone like the... well, I guess you could do that. Yeah, I mean, sure. But we also wanna loop through... okay, so we'll do this. We'll say clone.fields equals to self.fields.clone. Okay. And we'll catch unreachable on the out of memory error. And then we want to loop through all of the values. Oops. We'll get the mutable out there, and we will then now we can populate those, so we can say this is gonna be... actually, we need to implement clone here as well. So this clone property, self property. There we go, and then we can return a switch on self. Oops. Come on. And we have object that is gonna be... I mean, we can basically do an inline else here. Inline else clone. Okay. And then we probably need an allocator as well. Let's pass that along. So this basically says that every property should have a clone function that we're gonna access here. It's sort of like an interface almost that we're defining here. So everything needs that, because otherwise it's going to be a compilation error here. It's going to try and find a clone function on these things, and if it doesn't find it, it's going to fail. But it tries to find it there, and it calls it with the allocator. So that's the clone function for that. So now we can say, well, let's get the index here as well. And then there's going to be self fields values I dot clone. Okay. And there we go. There's our property cloned. Okay. Now, yeah, let's do the string. So this is going to be property string. And this is gonna have the value. Now let's just use... well, this needs a capacity though. This is kind of bad. I guess we'll just use this as a string. And we need to implement a clone function. And it's just going to be allocator duplicate self.value. Well, it's going to be this. Now we catch unreachable. Okay, that's the string. Should we differentiate integers and number, or should we just have number? We probably want to differentiate them, because it's gonna be differentiated in... I mean, I guess either everything could be a float, or let's just make integers and floats. That way we have support for both. Because the language itself is like, yeah, you have integers and floats. And any language that doesn't have a distinction like JavaScript or whatever, is gonna be it's gonna be because this is sort of like we're interfacing. The idea is that you could have any type of game engine in any language that's just gonna read JSON files and produce the game from that. So that's the idea here. But the value is not a string. It's gonna be a, what will it be, like an I32 or something? Sure. Let's start there and we'll see. Clone is just gonna be return self. And we don't use the allocator, so there we go. Right, so now we have object string, integer float, and object. Now we also need one more thing, at least, which is gonna be, it could be, we could have, I guess we could have two things, like entity reference. We're gonna have reference type, so it's gonna be either like entity reference, which is like a reference to an entity instance somewhere in some sort of scene. So I think what we want to do, oops, I'm recording macro. So I think what we want to do is, because the game is sort of is built, or the data is built up of scenes, and in each scene you can have a bunch of entities, and each entity has a unique ID, and they should have unique IDs between, you know, scenes as well. But it's like, it would be nice if we could say that an entity reference consists of a scene ID and also an entity ID in that scene, because then it's also easier to find the entity, because we're not indexing entity IDs for each scene. Maybe we need to do that in the future, but I'm just gonna say entity reference here. There's gonna be a property entity reference. So this will allow us to basically reference an entity. So for example, a button can connect to a door, and then, you know, you push the button in the game, it's gonna open the door or close the door or whatever, do something with that. So that's what that is for. And then we also want to have asset reference. Now this is going to be a reference to an asset, and an asset can be like a component type, like this thing that we're defining here. It can be a scene, it can be, so for example, for a scene you can have a teleport entity, or like a teleport that you go in there is going to teleport you to a different scene, and then you can specify which scene you want by having this asset reference to reference to that scene. It can be that, it can be a time map, it can be texture, anything that is an asset here, like an entity type. For example, if you want to create a spawner and you want to define which entity is going to spawn, which entity type is going to spawn, you can have that as well. So you can reference some sort of entity type, which is an asset. So this is going to be also a very important thing. So these are like different, because the assets are kind of the sort of, what do you call it? Yeah, they're the files, the data, the files. But these entities are more the instances inside each scene. So you create a scene and you put down a bunch of monsters or a door somewhere. Now that's an instance, and that's where this entity reference is going to reference. So let's start with a property entity reference there. Let's copy this. So property entity, and Let's see what we need here first. So we need a scene ID and an entity ID, and we don't really need to allocate anything, so that's fine. So we can just return self that we copy it. Fine. Okay. And that's it. And then we also need the asset reference, and this is just going to be the asset ID. Oops. Okay, so now we have those. We have all these bunch different properties. Let's move them into another file actually. Let's move them into like property. And we can import property object. There. Okay. We also need to initialize things here. Oh yeah, we need deinitialize as well. I forgot about that. So we're gonna have that there, and also clone. It's gonna be self properties.clone. There we go. Yeah, so we need a deinitialize function as well. So let's do that real quick. Deinitialize for properties. Come on. And we're gonna do the same thing here. This is gonna be the initialize. So we actually need these, and then we need the initialize on everything. Actually, for convention, we put the initialize above here. That's just my convention here. So it's proper string. Now this one is basically the only thing that actually needs. Well, this one and the object one that needs the initialize to actually do anything. So it's just going to be allocator free self value. Okay. And for these ones, well, we need to define the function, but we don't really do anything with it. Allocator. Yeah, and it's a empty function, but we want to define it so it exists here, because it's like an interface almost here. And we need to change the type. Now this one doesn't need anything either. Property asset reference doesn't need anything either. However, this one does need something here. So this one, we are going through each field. Oops, why am I doing it like that? Let's go. We're going through each field, and we're gonna deinitialize each field, and then in the end let's do a clear and free, so that it basically zeroes out the data, and so we don't get weird memory errors, and then it also frees that up there. Okay, it's basically resetting it back to an empty thing, except it zeroes the data as well. I think it zeroes the data anyway. well, maybe it doesn't zero the data, but it handles like capacity, I think. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Yeah. Okay. So that's it there. Now we have the initialize on all of the properties. Now let's go back here, and we should have this now. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so we have the data now defined, and yeah, that's gonna be like, yeah. So the idea is that this is dynamic because it has a bunch of fields. Now these are properties, and each property can be different type, and it's going to be determined by this union enum here. So if you encounter any of this, so this is perfectly safe to save as like a JSON file, for example. However, we could also add like constraints if you want. Like for example, an integer, you could have like max, you can have min value, like max value, min value. You can add convenience things like step, things that also exist basically in like HTML and stuff. You can add those to more easily, to have more, to make it easier to work with in the editor. So, and make the editor like support these things. So that's one thing that could be really nice to add in the future here. And same for string. You could have like max length, maybe even like validators and stuff like that. But anyway, oh yeah, also probably for some of these we probably also wanna support null. So the question then is like, do we create like a, you could do this, you could have like an optional, and then it's like a property optional, and then you have property optional. I mean, I'm not sure if we actually need it right now, but for example, for the for these kind of things, edit reference and asset reference, like what are they supposed to be from the start? Like, because we're probably gonna create them as something first and then populate them also when you change them, but they need something. So I think that these should probably be optional, but we'll see. And then we'll probably have like a validator when you save or something like that like complains like, okay, you have to set these things. But anyway, now that we have that, we could probably, we can start to try and build a component editor. Let's just go to the document again. Let's go here, and we have a bunch of these things. Let's get rid of this. I guess name could be something we want to have. ID, this one is required, and the other ones should be the same. Okay, so that's, we can start there. This actually does exist, so we can just keep that. Then we also have non-persistent data, but this doesn't have anything in it, so that's fine. Okay, so now we're ready to start creating the editor, and the way we do this is we go to out into layout. So first we go to layouts. Now here is where we have all the different layouts defined. now these layouts are basically UI editors. So we will, for example, well, I want to go here as well and add, oh yeah, we don't have it yet, so this is going to be component. I guess I'll copy the entity type one for now. Layout entity type into layout component. So now this exists, and then we'll rename anything entity type to component. Okay. Oh yeah, we need to add this one to documents as well. There we go. So now that exists. Now this file, this is like a sort of, well, how you say it, a hub for all of the things, basically. I've imported basically everything in here that is supposed to be shared between all the files, and I'm using this pub using namespace, but I think this is going to get deprecated soon. So, but it's a really nice way of organizing, because you can import a bunch of stuff into one file, and that file is called, well, it's this, it's this one, yeah. So it's lib, which exists in like the source folder. So we make it public from main.sig. That's important. It has to be in main, because then you can use import root like this. And this is a special kind of thing that you can import from anywhere, and it will always point to a main.sig. So the idea is that you don't have to import a relative path that you have to I mean, you could also like define a module in the build system, but this is a way to avoid that as well. You can import root to get the main file, and in the main file you can expose like global things that you want to be able to import from other very easily. So you always import lib like this, and then lib basically has everything you want to have. And then I also have config, which has some other stuff as well. But that's just a little bit of explanation there if you was curious about that. But anyway, so let's see. Yeah, here's now our component stuff, but we need, it's for the entity type now, so we have to like change a little bit here. We basically, the draw function is basically going to be empty. This is where what we draw like in the background of the thing, and the component's not going to have anything there. The menu is going to be different though. The menu, I think menu is going to basically take over the entire screen, basically. So the width here is actually, we can just set it to full screen. Okay, now this is going to be the component menu. Yes. I don't think that's actually visible. Yeah, no title bar there. And a whole bunch of stuff there. Let's see. Yeah, we had active document label. This is a generic function, works for all different types of documents. And that shows that. We have reset camera. We don't need that. We don't need to show the camera because we're not gonna use it. We're gonna need a save function. The thumbnail for the doc components. I don't think we're gonna have a good thumbnail for the components. It's like if you wanna sort of set an icon maybe, then that would be nice to have, but I don't think we're gonna have this. Let's just do that for now. Sure, we can show the ID. Let's say I'm just checking what we should keep here basically. The ID is hovered, so we show the ID fully there. Okay. Then we have the name for, so this is like an input. Yeah, this should be good as well, so you can change the name of the component. And then cell size, we're not gonna be using this, and we're not gonna be using that, and we're not gonna draw an icon menu. Okay, there we go. So that's it for the menu, except we need to implement a lot of stuff here to be able to edit the properties. Handle input. I don't think we actually need anything here. Yeah, we don't need to do anything here. I'm gonna disable this. Same for the draw function here. Okay. So the menu is basically everything that we're gonna have. We're gonna need to basically, yeah, let's just add property editor. I'm gonna call it an editor because it's like a mini editor here. So we'll add a property editor function. We're gonna of course need the context. We're gonna need the document, which is the component document. Oops, what am I doing here? I'm defining this in the wrong place. It's going to be over there. There we go. Now I'm just going to do this for now. This is going to be pretty involved here, defining this property editor. We're gonna need one editor like for each type of property, and objects are gonna have like a dynamic list of properties that you're gonna have. So it's gonna be a lot of stuff that you're gonna be able to do here, and that we have to implement here. So but let's just get this up and running first. So the layouts, we need to add component there, layout component. All right, and that should be it. Actually, we don't really need to do anything else here. Now we also want to go to our, we also need to go to Assets Manager. I think it's time to maybe generalize some things here, because it's, yeah. I'm gonna show you here. We have a plus button somewhere here, yeah. So we have a new asset pop up. That's basically like we're using it as a context menu here. Now here we have a bunch of different things. We have directory, but that's the only one that's sort of special. Then we have, and also texture, I guess, because that's not really a thing. But then we have like scene, time map, animation, entity type, and all of these are basically exactly the same. And as you can see here, we have all of these different fields for each type of asset. Now, this doesn't feel very nice. So what I'm thinking is, instead of having one for each asset, we are going to have one field that is a tag where the type is new asset dialog open. Now this is going to be a nullable, because the null state represents false. It's not open. But if it's populated, that's going to be the type of asset that is actually used, and this is called a document tag. There we go. So now we can delete all of these, And we don't have to add new ones, like for new assets. And I'm just gonna double check if we have anything else referenced in here. No, we don't, but we do have them here. So instead of saying is new scene dialog open, we're gonna say is new asset dialog open, and then we're gonna set that to be the scene type. I also wanna restart my LSP. I'm not sure if it's gonna crash. I think asset dialog open for time lapse. Okay, I'll do this. I'll remove that and then do LSP restart. Will it work now? So for animation, it's gonna be okay. Maybe it doesn't work because context is like it's trying to find information about context, and the context makes the LSP crash. That file makes the LSP crash. So this is entity type, and now we can simply do this. We add this one, and this is going to be components, and this is going to be components. There we go. Okay. Now here we're checking for new directory. Now you can see here also we have is new dialog open, and we have one for each of these. So instead of having one for each, we're gonna have one for all. So it's gonna be if we have new asset dialog open, and we're gonna have the document type, and let's see, I believe, yeah, here we have get type label, which is like a comp time way of getting the label for each document tag. So what we can do is we can say z begin. So we have new space and then document get type label document type. Well, we could also do a switch on this if we have it. We want to do a switch on that. Whoops. Sorry. And then we say if, yeah, inline else document. Let's just call this DT, I guess. Right. So this is basically, this is gonna sort of make a copy of this code for each type of document, but we only have to define this thing once, and we can also differentiate depending on the document. Now the difference is that now DT is actually comp time known here. So which means that when we get this, it is comp time known, and that allows us to do the append here. This is basically code generation that we're doing here. We're generating code for each type of document type, and the code generated is gonna have the, you know, the built string already built in the compile time. Okay, so and then we do defer end just like we do here. So let's just copy all this. And now the ID is gonna be like new asset input. Well, I'm just gonna call it new asset input for everything. It's just gonna have one open anyway at the time. So, and then we have the input text is gonna be the reusable text buffer. Fine. And then we have a create button. That's going to be the same for everything. We're going to have is new. So this is new asset dialog open is going to be null. So that basically closes the dialog. And then we have, yeah, then it's going to create a new asset. And then we'd simply say DT here to just, yeah. That's going to be the same for every asset. And then it resets the, so everything here is now generalized. Well, it's generic for every type of document. So also I want to get what we could do as well, because basically this label is going to be the same for each one. So I think I'm just going to say window label is going to be this, and it's going to be new plus document get type. I'm just going to see if this works. Because if this works, then we don't need to put all of this into the switch. We can do this. Because that's the only thing that we kind of need it to be comp time known for. Because then we don't have to duplicate all this code. It's probably like a very small win, but every little thing counts. Okay, now what we need to do now is just make sure that there's nothing else happening in any of the other dialogue here that is specific to that dialogue. I don't think that one, anything special is happening. Same here and same there. So yeah, so now we replaced all of that code with this here, more generic version. Now let's see, are we ready to try it out? We've added the new asset button. I mean, to be fair, this also looks exactly the same, except it's like a directory. So yeah, it's like we could also sort of add that in here, although then we would have to make this switch a little bit. So this is basically the only thing that changes, the label here. And so anyway, yeah, I'm gonna have to go soon here, but let's see if we can get at least the editor up and running. So let's see what kind of errors we will get here. Compiler errors, that is. And runtime errors, I guess, also. Okay. Error use of undeclared. Okay. Component property. Yeah, we need to import UUID. Access manager 334. Use of undeclared DT. Ah, yeah. So this is now document type. Probably gonna have more issues here. Oh, context. All right. So we need. Where's that? Is new. Oh, is new asset dialog open. So let's default that to null. Manager 297. No member name component. Oh yeah. So we need to go here and also add a new component type, or document content type, as it's called here. So here we actually want to add a component, which is going to be component document, which we need to get here, component documents. Yeah. And now it's gonna complain in a bunch of different places because of the switches. As you can see here, for 36, we have a switch here, and we can add component there. Uh, 594. Generate thumbnail, that's right. So what was that to do? Refactor its own file, okay. Yeah, this one, oh, it's a different order. Component. I am just gonna return null here. Right, so now we need to define these things. Dot component, dot JSON. We also need this one without the dot. We need, I mean, I realized basically this is also kind of funny, but you could just say get file filter like this, like plus get file filter tag. But the issue is that tag is not necessarily com time, and that's the issue here. So we have to have two different versions here, which is kind of silly, but it is not really com time because we do have this here. So you could do like inline, I guess. Actually, we could try that, like inline else we get the tag out. So that's hopefully now com time, and then it should be com time, and then get file filter of that, and then plus plus. No, wait. Here. Dot plus plus that. So that should be the same thing. But yeah, it's probably not gonna work. But we'll see. Oh, this is component. Okay, 127. Yeah, as you can see here, it's complaining about unable to resolve comp time value, which is strange because this is comp time. Like this is now comp time because it's like in an inline else, and it knows in like the branch that it is, it knows which document type it is, so or the tag. So I don't understand how this is not comp time. I think maybe it's a bug in the compiler, but it should be comp time. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be comp time, but I don't know. There's something there that doesn't really work because it's basically generating this code, except with this as the value, but then it's also copying, or it's taking each branch, and you get the tag out here. Actually, you know what? No, I'm stupid. It has to be this, right? Isn't that the thing? Maybe this is the one that should be. Oh, can I capture tag of non-union? Oh, so it's okay. Yeah, I was thinking of a union enum. This is just an enum, so that doesn't work. It should still. This should still. But this is. It cannot capture the tag. Of a non-union type. And this is an enum. So how do I get the actual tag? Or is this like comp time value? Like what type is it? Or do I have to like put this in a comp time? I thought that it would do this by default. Can I do this? Oh, maybe I can. Okay. Well, that solves it. Okay. Let's see, component property, what's going on? 22. Expected from object. Oh, right. This. Okay. So this is the payload. We have to make. We have to do like a union init here. And now here we actually need. Here we actually get the tag out there. And this should be comp time now. So we have the union init. This is gonna be the thing that's gonna be in the union. The type of union is gonna be property, and then the tag is that. I'm not sure if the tag was supposed to be like a string or if it can just be the tag. Expected string found, yeah. So this has to be a string, and you can just do tag name in that case. Okay, 35. Property string. Dupe members. Oh yeah, so dupe needs U8 here. Probably made that mistake a bunch of times here. 89. Clear and free. This needs. Does this? Is this? Can this be an error? Oh no. This needs to, so this needs to be mutable. I see. Which means that basically every one of these needs to be mutable. So this needs to be mutable. 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 Yeah, every one of these. This one also needs to be mutable. And probably also more stuff needs to be mutable. But let's see, cannot enumerate values. Ah. We cannot enumerate pointers. Compiler unable to parse into type. Wait, unable to parse into type. Oh, that's a JSON issue here. Unable to parse into type something align 16 U8. Referenced by deserialize. So what would that be? Oh, I think I know. Yeah, it's the hash map. The hash map is not actually. Yeah, this hash map does not work for. Maybe we should do like an ID just so that you can like rename properties, I guess, easily. And then the property itself is gonna have like a key and then value or something. You could do that. Let's just use the JSON array hash map. I'm not sure if they have like an unmanaged version. So that one plays more nicely with JSON. And you don't have that. Okay, so let's do JSON hash map. JSON array hash map. Struct JSON array hash map does not have an name empty. Okay, so what about this? No field, function name values. Okay, what about .init? I probably need like an allocator, perhaps. No member name init? What? Okay. So how do you just make an empty one? I have to look this up. Zig standard. So we have standard JSON array hash map. It's over here. Why doesn't it have like a init function? So I have to create it using because I want to have it you could also define JSON parse and JSON stringify as well, so you don't have to like wrap it. You could do that. You could do let's see, you could keep the string array hash map, but then we do JSON parse and I'm just copying this. Okay, and so this is gonna be object. This is gonna be, or actually we need hash map. So we wanna parse using I think we need like inner parse, and the type is gonna be the JSON thing, the JSON like array hash map of properties. Yeah. So basically, changing the type. We're interpreting the object as a different type, so that we can parse it with JSON easily. And then, what do you want? What do you need? You need allocator, source, and options. Okay. And that's our sort of JSON array hash map. And then we return. We don't. It's not going to allocate anything in the hash map itself. We simply return map, which is going to be a string array hash map unmanaged. That's what's in the actual. Like if you look at the browser here, this map is what we're trying to build. That's what's in the JSON wrapper there. So we so to create this thing, we say fields is equal to the hash map dot map, because the map is the inner map. So that should work there. And then we have to also do try. There we go. So there's our JSON parse. Now we also need JSON stringify, which needs what? It's gonna need these things. Okay, now the JSON stringify is also similar. It's gonna be just try JW. I'll be calling it JW everywhere else. So it was in their code that they called WS. So JSON writer, and it's just gonna write a standard JSON array hash map. So I'm just gonna wrap our fields like this. We're just wrapping it into a JSON array hash map. That should write it out properly there. Okay. So anytime JSON now encounters this property object, it's gonna see, oh, we got a JSON parse, JSON stringify. So it's gonna use those instead to actually parse and stringify the JSON, so that we get proper serialization working here. And we're using the built-in standard JSON array hash map to be able to read and write the property or the object more easily there. Okay. Now let's see. Yes, so write just accepts a value and it doesn't really do anything else. And it's a try, I believe, yes. Okay, I think that's it for that. Now let's see if we get any more compilation errors. Well, we do have one here. Expected type found function content type. What? Expected type. Oh, right. This needs to be. Oh, interesting. Interesting that it says found function. Expected type. Like we're sort of almost initializing a function here. If you do that. Okay, that's weird. But anyway, I'm not sure what you can use that for, but this is property, yes. Okay, assets manager 249. Switch must handle all possibilities, yes. So it's gonna be component 320. Okay, here we go. I think now what we can do is we can say this is comp time and it will actually work. Hopefully. Seems to work. Expected 2 arguments, found 1. Oh yeah. Wait. Oh no, I removed a whole bunch of stuff over here. Okay, so begin new entity type. Yeah, it's just empty. Okay. Cool. What's this now? Unable to resolve comp time value. Document type. Okay, so that also, this needs to be comp time. New assets. Okay, so that needs to be comp time. Okay, so right, we could do the same thing here then. So we have to like do this. I guess we could do this, and then this is PT. Will that work? Okay. Layout component 51. Expected found. Oh. Okay, layout utils. Switch, another switch that handles everything. All right, we don't have an icon for component, but let's just add this here. So it's basically gonna be a blank, like nothing. It's gonna be in. There we go. Now we got this up and running. Let's make a new directory for components for our new type of asset here. And let's add now a component. And let's call this, I don't know, health component. Or just health, I guess. Okay, so we got health. It got the weird icon here. That's, okay, the directory icon. Let's see if we can open this now. Okay, there we go. So here's our component editor. And we can, yeah, we have the basic stuff. We just need to add a whole bunch of now UI to actually be able to edit the properties of the component. And we can change the name, save it. Let's try and restart this to see if it actually works. There we go. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's gonna be it for this time. I don't have time for more now. So yeah, next time we're gonna continue working on implementing the components here. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, and yeah, see you later. Bye bye.